morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
We might be riding into a bit of a sensitive area today. When Baxter Black's turn comes, he will be talking about a genetic defect that for some reason sees high-quality women attracted to cowboys.
Most cowboy types, like me, never question how we wind up attracting a fairly decent type of woman.
And you'll meet an old cowboy and rancher who's been on quite a few Spirit of the West cruises, and he usually comes all by himself. That'll be Saskatchewan Rancher Dave Rogers.
That's what's got me nervous. I think it might outlive me.
What does Dave think might outlive him? Is it a horse, a dog, a cat? You might be surprised when you find out. And the latest cattle on feed numbers are now in, and the Rangeland News looks at whether or not the North American cow herd is expanding or contracting.
Yeah, the October 1 feedlot inventory had 4.4 million heifer and heifer calves.
About 2% above a year ago.
The elegant Doris Daly is back in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight with a look at some history of the early West.
Just 10 days shy of birthday, he'd have turned 15 in May, and stories of the Chisholm Trail had stole his heart away.
On the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, you know something a little bit different this week. How a few inches of snow on the ground, enough to leave tracks, can help a young colt from wanting to stay at the barn instead of confidently heading up the trail with his rider. While Dave Rogers gets settled, we'll let Bob Marshall open up the gate.
The moon's still high in the western sky as we roll from our bunk for dawn. Coyote are calling, the cattle are bawling, it's time for a cowboy song. We'll be roping and riding, I'm testifying, singing a cowboy song. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, tippy-I-I, yippee-yippee-oh. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, come on, it's the cowboy way. After working all day till the sun has set, riding drag in the dust and heat, we hop in the truck, give her the gas, we're headed up the old main street. We'll be yelling and shouting, there'll be no doubting, we're headed up the old main street. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, tippy-I-I, yippee-yippee-oh. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, come on, it's the cowboy way. There's women to kiss long next to a drain, blowing into town like a hurricane. Getting our fill of dancing and beer, then we're headed on out of here. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, tippy-I-I, yippee-yippee-oh. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, come on, it's the cowboy way. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, tippy-I-I, yippee-yippee-oh. Tippy-I, tippy-oh, tippy-I-I-ay, come on, it's the cowboy way. We'll be roping and riding, there'll be no denying, living the cowboy way.
Well, the Spirit of the West cruise had just docked in Dublin, Ireland after a fascinating journey around Ireland, Scotland, England, and France. And Dave Rogers is one of the colorful characters who's been with us many times. He's a rancher from the area near Lashburn, Saskatchewan. Always seems to have folks listening to his stories. And I know he's traveled a lot of places around the world. And I also know he was a little reluctant to let me point a microphone at him, but as we waited to disembark there in the lounge, I knew I had him cornered. We're doing cruise memories from 2019. Do you have any, or is it all a blur?
No, we had a really good cruise. Covered a lot of territory.
Did heard a lot of accents.
Yeah, we had some pretty good accesses, and good for you and Billy to be escorting us around, and we quite enjoyed it. I seen some cattle different times when I was traveling around. Seen some good Chevrolets, and I seen some other ones I won't mention that being a little on the biased side, but yeah, there's some good-looking cattle in Ireland and Scotland too, which was surprising for me. We did see some Highland cattle that were good-looking. I always never thought a Highland cattle was much, but there's some of them are pretty good-looking.
Yeah, we had a cow we bought from some neighbors, and she was, her mother was a Highland, because he raised purebred Highlands, and an Angus bull got in there and bred her mother, and so she was Black Angus and Highland crossed. Now that's about as true to old Scotland as you can get, I guess. And she looked pretty Angus, except she just had a little longer hair, but she really had bad feet. Her feet were just, that's why we finally had to color her.
Oh yeah, well that's a pretty bad trait for hereditaryness, it seems like. So
and in our big rugged rangeland, that doesn't work very well.
Don't work at all, no. So.
Every time we looked around, you were sitting down somewhere talking to somebody from some other part of the world or buying a drink for some guys. You must have met a whole bunch of interesting people here.
Well, yes, I did. Talked to so many people I can't even remember it all, but yeah, we come from lots of them, of course, because I wear a hat I bought in Texas. Everybody thinks they come from Texas, and so that's the usual question. And some of them are Texans, and some of them aren't.
You bought your hat in Texas?
Oh yes, I always buy my cowboy hats in Texas.
You do?
At the same place, in fact, I buy them at Kavanaugh's in Webster, Texas, just south of Houston. Been doing that for quite a few years. I had a friend that lived down there. Friendswood, but he passed away a couple of years ago, so but I still go down there sometime to visit the families.
Well, Dave is always seen wearing a good cowboy hat, but often it's black in color, and there's a story there. You'll hear it when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. When we were getting the Spirit of the West group together on the cruise ship, it's not too hard to pick out Saskatchewan Rancher Dave Rogers. When we're down in the tropics, if we'd go to the Caribbean or Hawaii or somewhere like that in January, he'd be wearing shorts, cowboy boots, and sometimes a Willie Nelson-style headband. But when we're further north, he's almost always wearing jeans and boots, nice-looking shirt and vest, and a good-looking black felt hat. And I had to ask him this. Does the wind ever blow around Lashburn, Saskatchewan? Or is it just perfectly calm all the time?
Well, now, we all know the answer to that. There's been lots of wind the last few years. It seems to be getting worse. I don't know what the secret to that is. And very unpredictable weather. I was very fortunate this year because I decided it was going to hail, so I put on extra hail insurance, and sure enough, I got the hail. So I'm rushing home, hoping to have a check waiting for me when I get there. So we'll see how that goes.
Did one of your expensive Texas cowboy felt hats ever blow off in the wind and go across the Saskatchewan prairie, never to be found again?
Well, no, I can't say that. No, it always found it again. I had to chase it a little ways sometimes, but, well, I live in the parkland area, so we do have bush there. It's not like southern Saskatchewan. Yeah, I wear a hard hat when I'm working, though, so I don't have that trouble when I'm working.
Yeah, they stay on pretty good.
They stay on good, yeah, and save you some lumps sometimes, and I quite think they're the answer as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah, they're mandatory in some places.
Yes, they're even using them in truck wagon races now.
That's right. They're wearing, all the outriders, I think, wear them now.
That's right. Yeah.
Did you get the Stampede this year?
No, I did not get the Calgary Stampede this year. I was at a couple wagon races, one out in Dawson Creek, BC. I seen wind up the world race meet in Dawson Creek, and so now I can't even remember the name of the guy that won, but it was a good race, I can tell you that.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's pretty competitive on that northern part of the circuit. You got those Grand Prairie wagons and the vegans, Chance Vegan, and all those guys.
Yeah, and that's the name of the guy that won.
Chance Vegan, there you go. How did I come up with that? Well, Dave talks about some of the many places around the world that he's traveled, but first, when we got back recently from the Chilliwack Main Event Horse Expo and the Trainers Challenge, this time the colts in the Trainers Challenge were offered for sale. They were supplied by Alberta's Rockin' Heart Ranch, and they were offered for sale by sealed bids that were open after the finals. And a beautiful 3-year-old blue roan gelding, RHR Survivor Hancock, known by the barn name of Hank, was the winner of the finals under Kyle Fisher. And would you believe he sold for $10,990? And that leads us into this song from Belinda Gale about a horse whose name was Dollar.
Oh, Dollar was a sorrel horse that stood just 15-2. But he was the meanest bronc the Cowboys ever knew. Captured in a Mustang band out on the Nevada plains. That's burnt by sun and summer, never sees the winter rains. 1,100 pounds of muscle, bone, and hate. To be a great bucking horse just seemed to be his fate. And the Cowboys that got on his back, he'd always buck 'em down. His fame, it grew bigger as he went from town to town. They never named him till one time at a rodeo. It was 15 minutes before they started up the show, when a cowboy said, I'll bet a buck that horse that you can't ride. That one there without a name, strapped in that sorrel hide. Now that cowboy that made the brag was a tough one to be throwed. But the horse turned out the victor, 'cause the cowboy never rode. So they called that horse Old Dollar from that moment on. And the Cowboys that got on his back, they didn't last too long. Dollar, oh Dollar. Dollar was the sorrel horse the Cowboys couldn't ride. Dollar, picture of a demon strapped up in a sorrel hide. Cowboys were all standing just outside the announcer's stand, when a little girl unnoticed walked up to Dollar's pen. By the time the Cowboys turned around, now it was just too late. That little girl was sitting on the top rail of his gate. As the Cowboys watched, it made their jaws go slack. That little girl slid out the gate and onto Dollar's back. Well, he bowed up for a second and kinda settled down. Began to walk around like a gentle horse from town. Dollar, oh Dollar. Cowboys tried to ride him and most of them were good. Dollar, oh Dollar.
Well, Belinda Gale will be back at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival in March of 2020. A lot of folks are glad to hear that. And now it's back to the visit with Dave Rogers.
You travel around quite a lot, it seems to me. You've seen a lot of interesting places.
Well, I always got another place to go. Like I said, I got a lot more mountains to climb and a lot more rivers to cross yet. But I got to get at it because time goes by.
Yeah. What are some of the more interesting spots you've been?
Oh, it's hard to put a scope on it. Way back a lot of years ago, I quite enjoyed the Parker Ranch in Hawaii. I thought that was really something. That's before they had their interpretive center and stuff, and all that was around there was an old Hereford bull that weighed about 2,800 pounds, and I don't think it ever been out to the herd for a long time. I don't know why he was hanging around there. There's nobody to tell you anything at that time.
What year would that have been?
1978.
Is that right? Yeah. My gosh. Were you there on our cruise? Like 2 of our cruises went to Hawaii and toured the Parker Ranch. I can't remember if you were on.
No, I was never on either one of those. I enjoyed the King Ranch down there, but I like the little places. About the best place I ever was Cairns, Australia, and there's a little plateau just up from Cairns. And the people there's ranchers there, and it's not like the rest of. It's not like the rest of Australia where they're all 36,000 head or something. All those guys are about 500 head or so, and they only have to have about a section and a half of land or less to run 500 cows. You never have to put up feed. All you got to do is run them through the tick dip once in a while.
Right.
And that's where you should be raising cattle.
I guess, yeah.
No work to it, Dave.
Yeah, it's fascinating over there, isn't it? And different, like a lot different.
It's really different. I didn't make it to any of the big stock stations for lack of time. I would like to go back and tour some of the places in there, but I don't know when that'll ever happen. I got a lot of places to go before that.
Well, coming up, Baxter Black examines the reasons why some very high-quality women seem to be attracted to cowboys, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, and I'll be right back after this with a little peek at women who love cowboys.
Your land is a legacy, a challenge from those who tended it before you to build on their foundations. At Corteva Agriscience, we understand what it means to be the stewards of a legacy. We embrace the challenge of building on the foundation of Dow AgroSciences to maintain your trust, to bring new solutions, to help you care for your land. See how we can help build your legacy at rangeandpasture.com.
And for our Canadian listeners, just check Corteva.ca, the Canadian website.
It came as wonderful news that scientists had finally mapped the human genome. Now they know the arrangement of all the DNA that makes up the cells in our body, and knowing what is right allows us also to know what is wrong, which can help delineate and subvert genetic defects. A momentous breakthrough, but it rang a small alarm bell in the back of my brain. Most cowboy types, like me, never question how we wind up attracting a fairly decent type of woman. I was reminded of this when I attended the wedding of one of my good friends. I have known him for 20 years and love him like a brother, but I am intimately acquainted with his major flaws that I discount because I have the same ones. And yet, with the exception of falling in love with him, his new bride seemed an intelligent person. All my life I have attracted these like-minded misfits. I mean, characters you wouldn't have in your home on a holiday. And yet they have all married or at least tempted women who are unexpectedly nice, smart, and in every other respect, discerning humans. I have concluded that their willingness to marry a cowboy type is a result of a genetic defect, one that blocks out the good judgment gene. So you can see my concern. If this defect in her chromosomes was corrected, would she then be able to see our misguided priorities, like missing the birth of our first child because we had to go roping, or our belligerent stubbornness when we insist that there is still gas in the tank, even though the gauge says empty, or our uncouthness, like at supper, when we insist upon explaining the difficulties of a uterine prolapse to our new in-laws, who are both Presbyterian ministers. But as long as this defect remains intact in a certain number of females, we will always be able to begat little cowboys, and we are lucky that it is a sex-related trait. It is obviously a gender-specific genetic defect, isn't it? I mean, personally, I can't think of a single case where men have fallen in love with women with major character flaws. We're genetically programmed to weigh all her assets and debits and make well-informed decisions about love and marriage, an area in which we are vastly superior, not to mention being very open-minded. And so that's how it is, and I don't want to hear any more about it.
Yeah, right.
This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, brought to you by Corteva Agri-Science.
Farm Fair International returns this November 6th to 10th. Witness the future of Alberta's agriculture industry as guests from around the world gather at the Edmonton Expo Center to buy and sell top-quality livestock, make important connections, and share knowledge. At Farm Fair, you can shop for unique holiday gifts at the Winter Marketplace or enjoy a variety of Western entertainment like the Stock Dog Trials and the Heritage Ranch Rodeo. It's a big deal to buy, sell, and connect. Plan your visit at farmfairinternational.com. Well, just ahead of the Rangeland news, those of you who are nearly as old as I am, I'm sure can remember Canada's cowboy troubadour Stu Davis. Radio and TV singing cowboy back in the 50s and the early 60s. And on several of his TV shows, his son Dwayne would appear with him. Now, Dwayne is a fine singer and songwriter himself, spent most of his career in education, and it just seems that this song of his really fits with early November in the high country.
The elk are coming down from the hills each morning. The winter grazing's better here below. The evening sky last night was like a warning. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning, it's cold outside and looking like early snow. Every year this town is getting smaller. The kids can hardly wait to up and go. And now they've closed the high school down forever. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning, it's cold outside and looking like early snow. Clouds up over the mountains getting darker every day. As soon as the wind turns westerly, they're bound to head this way. There's been no rain all summer and all the grass is brown. The rodeo is over and the circus is leaving town. Another farming family left the valley. They left last night, nobody heard them go. They left the tractor standing in the hayfield. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning, it's cold outside and looking like early snow. The elk are coming down from the hills each morning. The winter grazing's better here below. The evening sky last night was like a warning. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning, it's cold outside and looking like early snow. It's cold outside and looking like early snow. This morning, it's cold outside and looking like early snow.
The news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
Right here at the top of page 1, it says there is some indication that the North American cow herd might be entering a contraction phase, but there's also some indication that it might not. Well, Gary Crawford's report might be able to sort this up.
Friday's Agriculture Department Cattle on Feed report.
It really doesn't have a big surprise from a market impact.
Darn. But USDA livestock analyst Shale Shagam says it does have
sex.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Basic numbers, October 1st feedlot inventory, 11.3 million head, 1% lower than 1 year ago. That's after September placements of just under 2.1 million head, up 2%. But now we get to the good part, the breakout by
sex.
Yeah, the October 1 feedlot inventory had 4.4 million heifer and heifer calves.
About 2% above a year ago, and the highest number of heifers on feed on October 1st since 2001.
Also, as a percentage of the entire feedlot inventory,
the number of heifer calves was about 39%, which is also a very, very high number.
So are we in a herd contraction phase or not? Shagam says
we're very much sort of at a tipping point.
A cow tipping point. Which way will it go?
It's going to depend largely on the availability of probably forage over the winter.
All right, in Washington, Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Well, it appears now that some of those newer pneumatic dart gun systems that fire lightweight darts are now being used in some specific situations to administer antibiotics to cattle on pasture that require treatment for foot rot or pneumonia or other things like that. But apparently the use of these remote drug delivery systems creates other potential problems. Recent study demonstrated that the calves that were darted had higher levels of stress hormones after injection, had more evidence of muscle damage, and more pain at the injection site than the calves that received a conventional subcutaneous injection. So it just might be that well-experienced cowboys on good horses with good ropes can still quietly subdue an animal and inject the right amount of medication in the right place, and there are lots of them around. Well, the USDA's Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, announced last week that it has suspended its plan to phase in the use of electronic ID, radio frequency ID tags for cattle and bison. The agency said the policy shift was in response to executive orders from President Trump that have highlighted the need for transparency and communication of issues before placing any new requirements on American farmers and ranchers. In April, APHIS announced its plan for animal disease traceability with a fact sheet posted to its website, and that sheet detailed the USDA's plan to transition to RFID tags from metal ear tags for cattle and bison. At the time, USDA said it would stop providing the free metal tags, though approved vendors would still be permitted to produce official metal tags for 1 year. And on January 1st, 2021, USDA would end the approval of vendor production of metal tags with the USDA shield on it. The Center for Consumer Freedom, CCS, has placed a full-page ad in the New York Times that puts the unappetizing ingredients of plant-based meats on display, as apparently nearly 50% of consumers incorrectly believe plant-based proteins to be healthier than real meat. The CCF believes it's important for the public to know what they are eating. The message says plant-based meat is ultra-processed. Many of these products boast dozens of ingredients, and the National Institute of Health found that the ultra-processed foods can cause weight gain and overeating, which can contribute to a variety of health problems. While fake meat companies are hoping to exploit stories about the need to reduce consumption of real meat, according to recent findings in the Annals of Internal Medicine, reducing red meat consumption has little to no effect in reducing the risk of heart disease, cancer, or stroke. Well, there's a calf and a yearling and a regular sale at the Kamloops yards of the BC Livestock Co-op in Kamloops on November the 12th, the calf sale at the Williams Lake yards on November 13th, and a regular cattle sale on November 14th, and a pre-sort sale at the Vanderhoof yards on November the 15th. You can get all the information at bclivestock.bc.ca, and you can watch the sales live right there. Meanwhile, at the Innisfail Auction Market, there are pre-sort sales on Mondays, regular sales every Wednesday, a bred cow and heifer sale on Friday, November 22nd, and the next horse sale is November 23rd. Wow, the Danes boys are going to be busy. You can get all the information at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to this week's final item. You know, kids can be so supportive. And I really still love being able to put on my ball glove and play some catch with the grandsons, and I can still run down a fly ball and catch it sometimes. And the grandson's father, our oldest boy, was watching, and I guess he described it accurately. He said, "Dad, you're about as swift as a coyote." An old coyote. An old coyote with arthritis and been run over by a truck about 8 days ago. Thank you, Spence. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a look at how enough snow to cover the ground and let horses leave tracks can be a pretty good training aid when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Farm Fair International returns this November 6th to 10th. Witness the future of Alberta's agriculture industry as guests from around the world gather at the Edmonton Expo Center to buy and sell top-quality livestock, make important connections, and share knowledge. At Farm Fair, you can shop for unique holiday gifts at the Winter Marketplace or enjoy a variety of Western entertainment like the Stock Dog Trials and the Heritage Ranch Rodeo. It's a big deal to buy, sell, and connect. Plan your visit at farmfairinternational.com. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File looks at an interesting and somewhat different situation today concerning helping a colt in the early stages of getting started to confidently be ridden away from the rest of the horses. But first, here is the latest on the next Spirit of the West cruise. We are calling this The Spirit of the West Brings It Home. And as I said last week, this will be our 19th annual, and after that many years, Billy and I will be stepping back from hosting cruises after this one. So we really want to make it memorable and as uncomplicated as possible. So here's how we plan to do things. Folks from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and beyond, and in the U.S. will probably fly to Kelowna, BC on July 15th. Overnighting there in a beautiful hotel and then board the coaches for a trip up to the McLennan Ranch, our little place above Kamloops. And you'll be treated to a live show with the amazing Western Spirit Band along with special guest Lewis the Big Rig McIver, who of course gave me one of his kidneys. And after the visit to our place, the coaches will take you to beautiful Sun Peaks where you can ride the chairlift, see the mountain wildflowers, and see the place where cattle still graze and have done so in the summers for over 100 years. After overnighting there, the coaches head to Vancouver. You overnight then, and in the next morning, board the beautiful Holland America Koningsdam for a 7-day trip up the Inside Passage to Alaska and back. You don't fly back, you ride the ship back. And we'll have lots of special events for our cruise group, including one of our favorite trips, the White Pass Railroad. We sure hope you can join Billy and I on our farewell cruise, and for all the information, you can see the cruise page at hugh-mclennan.com and call 1-800-530-0131.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Hear that? That's what fall sounds like at Urban Tack and Western Wear. Brand new arrivals by the truckload every week. The latest fall fashions to keep you warm and toasty, plus over in the new Boot Ranch, a huge selection for cowboys and cowgirls of all ages, along with work boots, hikers, and slip-ons. And of course, no visit to Urban's is complete without a peek at their unique Western decor and collectibles. Exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield.
Canada's largest Western store.
I heard from a listener last week who has taken on the job of starting a few colts. He says, I can usually get them going fairly well under saddle in the round pen and the arena for a week or two, but here's where I run into trouble. When I want to ride the colt away from the arena and the other horses, his mind is back on the other horses no matter how much I urge him to leave, and he just zigs and zags all over the place, and I can't get him to leave on a straight course. Well, you know, I always found that snow-covered ground can be a help with horses in a lot of ways, and here's how it has worked for me. When I sense the colt's mind isn't where I want to go and his tracks in the snow are all over the place, I'll ride over to the fence line of the corral where the other colts are, and then I'll let my horse trot up and down the outside fence line. Once we've trotted up and down there a few times, eventually his attention will want to go away from the other horses for a little bit, and if I can sense when that is, I'll just sit and rest really quiet. Now, that would probably only last a few seconds, and then when he turns back to be with the other colts, I would ask him to trot up and down the fence line again, and as time went on, he would keep his attention away from the other colts for a longer and longer spell, and pretty soon his ears were pointing forward, and we could head out the yard. Now, on each colt, it would take me anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to have them at the point where they'd head out of the yard and say, okay, let's go for a ride. And once they left the yard, I'd say, we don't have time to go for a ride right now. And I'd take them back to the corral. You see, all I wanted was for them to consider going out for a ride. And for the next few colts I'd ride, after the first one of the day, they'd see the first horse's tracks in the snow, and they'd be much more interested in following them. And the next day, if it had taken me 20 minutes to head out, it might take 5. It's not like it's set for life, but by the third ride or so, I know I could just get on and ask them to go, and those ears would be straight ahead, and you could feel right through their body they were thinking, yeah, let's go for a ride. And for urban saddles and western wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something our horses really do well on, and they get it every day, is that feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. And you can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. Farm Fair International returns this November 6th to 10th. Witness the future of Alberta's agriculture industry as guests from around the world gather at the Edmonton Expo Center to buy and sell top-quality livestock, make important connections, and share knowledge. At Farm Fair, you can shop for unique holiday gifts at the Winter Marketplace or enjoy a variety of Western entertainment like the Stock Dog Trials and the Heritage Ranch Rodeo. It's a big deal to buy, sell, and connect. Plan your visit at farmfairinternational.com. Saskatchewan boy Colter Wall is getting ready for his extended tour of the Southeast U.S., doing shows in Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, winding up in Oklahoma on New Year's Eve. And I guess Florida in December might be a little different than his hometown of Swift Current. Anyhow, before we get back to Dave Rogers, here's Colter.
Mr. Toronto man, go away from my door. You got my wheat and canola seed, you're asking me for more. You better fly for I produce my 44. I'm just a prairie boy, never meant none no harm. Spend my days making wages out on the Martin's farm. No eastern boys gonna twist my arm. It's so damn cold out here, the wind will cut you half in two. I ain't kidding now, my old plow is frozen to my mule. I've been living off ice cold rainbow stew. Don't be picking fights with no Mennonites. Don't be raising cane while they're planting grain. They're working through the night. Gonna let you know if you ain't acting right. So, Mr. Toronto man, go away from my door. You got my wheat and canola seed, you're asking me for more. Better fly for I produce my 44. Better fly for I produce my 44.
Well, I didn't know until recently, but Coulter actually grew up listening to this program on CKSW in Swift Current, where we've been for a lot of years. I do hear from folks in Saskatoon that pick up the signal, too. Now, I'm not sure how many folks around the Kamloops area are aware that we're heard every Sunday morning at 7 on CFBX. That's 92 FM. They've got a bunch of great programs, and the signal comes in loud and clear all over the region, and we get it all the way up here at the ranch. Now, let's get back to Dave Rogers.
Do you have horses on the place at home?
I have 2 horses, yeah. One for my grandson and one for the rest of us to ride. I don't have bushland pasture anymore. Horses are good for cutting and stuff like that, but then I run a one-man operation now, and so cattle shoots to it, and everything's a one-man operation, and there's nothing to it, eh?
Wow.
2 dogs there now and about 25 cats and 1 donkey and 1 fish, eh? And all got to be looked after.
1 fish?
Got 1 fish, yeah. Had 2, but the other one died, and I'm waiting for this one to die so I can get rid of my fish tank.
Yeah, 25 cats would make short work of 1 fish.
Well,
depending on how big a fish, maybe it's a 25-pound lake trout or something.
It's about a 4.5-pound goldfish.
Oh, really? I'll be there.
Biggest goldfish you'll ever see, probably. Yeah.
I've heard they live a long, long time.
That's what's got me nervous. I think it might outlive me.
Well, this has sure been fun, Dave. Really glad you came up and sung that song the other night. That was written by Tim Spencer, one of the 3 founding members of the Sons of the Pioneers. And
you gotta write that down because I can never remember who it was.
Yeah, and it was a big hit for the Sons of the Pioneers back in probably the 40s, I would bet, 1940s or something like that. Cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women. They'll drive you crazy. They'll drive you insane. It's the same guy that wrote that beautiful song, The Timber Trail. And he also wrote a song that was a big hit for Mickey Gilley called A Room Full of Roses. But no, that was really fun. That was a good time. So.
Yeah. Good to be on it. Good to see you and Hugh and Billy. And good to see one more trail down the road I hear yet. So we'll see how that
we're
going to
try her one more time for sure.
Yeah. Never want to say die, that's for sure.
Nope, don't say whoa in a tough spot. I'm sure you never do.
Well, coming up is another great cowboy and singer who has really been missed since he rode across the Great Divide quite a few years ago now. Buck Ramsey with our classic Song of the West, and then a fitting piece of cowboy poetry from Doris Daly when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Farm Fair International returns this November 6th to 10th. Witness the future of Alberta's agriculture industry as guests from around the world gather at the Edmonton Expo Center to buy and sell top-quality livestock, make important connections, and share knowledge. At Farm Fair, you can shop for unique holiday gifts at the Winter Marketplace or enjoy a variety of Western entertainment like the Stock Dog Trials and the Heritage Ranch Rodeo. It's a big deal to buy, sell, and connect. Plan your visit at farmfairinternational.com. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West, the classic Song of the West for this week coming up, and the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight as well. 2 of the 3 colts at the recently concluded Chilliwack Main Event Trainers Challenge were roans, and as I mentioned, Hank the Blue Roan sold for nearly $11,000 after the performance. And while I was playing music at the round pen between the training sessions, I just couldn't resist playing Mike Hurwitz's Little Blue Roan.
Now Henry was a cowhand down on the 91. Loved to ride and roll, and he broke some just for fun. One day he spied a little blue roan with spots upon his back. Knew he had to have that horse, and good Lord, that was that. Now he raised his hand so well that it weren't a case of luck. When the man said, son, you bought a horse, hope you got $900. Henry digs out his robe, and he left there busted flat. But he trailered home that little blue roan with the spots upon his back. Now he pulled up in the yard about the time they finished chuck. So the boys was hanging out when Henry stepped out of his truck. Walked around the back real proud, but he ducked a second late when a hoof shot at him knocked him flat as he opened up the gate. Henry picked himself up off the ground and the boys was laughing hard. Backed the blue roan out and he leads him across the yard. Heard a yelp and spun around, but there weren't nothing there. Sis old Cookie's dingo pup went sailing through the air. Now he parked him in a round corral and he went to get his rig. When he came back from the tack shed, roan was dancing quite a jig. Poles were scattered everywhere, and the line with the boss's shirts was tied around a blue roan's neck and trailing through the dirt. Now the blue roan, he was stout and quick, and cowy as could be. He could turn on a dime and give you change, suited Henry to a T. If you dropped the reins, he'd stand there still like a good cow pony should. You get to sneaking around behind him, boys, he's bound to nail you good. It was on a rainy morning when he broke old Jack's good leg. Gave the vet a dandy knot that looked like a hard-boiled egg. Clayton parked his truck behind him when he's tied up to a fence. Lost the mirror on his brand new rig and acquired some minor dents. That summer turned to fall, things went from bad to worse. If a blue roan's name was spoke at all, it was prefaced with a curse. The boss said, Henry, you're a hell of a hand, but you just gotta know, we'd like to have you winter on, but that roan has got to go. Now Henry never was a man for sitting on the fence, so he packed his rig, drew his pay, though it didn't make much sense. Now he's camped up on the muddy, eating beans and bacon fat. His red eyes staring at the little blue roan with the spots upon his back. He'd say that horse for a nickel, and he'd never take him back.
Well, for the classic Western song this week, I dug out a tape that I got from Buck Ramsey in 1993. Buck was a Texas working cowboy until a horseback wreck put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And from then until the time he died in 1998, his gift for writing and singing the music and poetry of the West really blossomed. This song that he put on his Rolling Uphill from Texas tape well, that's where I learned it from, but nobody seems to know the origins of A Cowboy's Letter from Home.
Out on a Texas ranch one night, the work was almost through. Said one cowboy to his pal Jack, there's a letter waiting for you. I bet it's from your sweetheart, Jack, said a gruff voice from back in the crowd. And they laughed at the joke, and some rolled up smoke, while Jack read his letter aloud. It's only a letter from home, sweet home, from the family back on the farm. From father, from mother, from sister and brother, praying he will keep you from harm. The baby whispers a prayer each night to guide you wherever you roam. We would welcome you, Jack, please won't you come back? Read his letter from home, sweet home. So Jack told all his pals that night, I'm riding back to that fair land. And one One by one his partners came and took him by the hand. Said one, if we had families like you, we'd all be much better men. We would like it so before you go, if you read that letter again. It's only a letter from home, sweet home, from the family back on the farm. From father, from mother, from sister and brother, praying he will keep you from harm. The baby whispers a prayer each night to guide you wherever you roam. We would welcome you, Jack, please won't you come back? Read the letter from home, sweet home.
Doris Daly wrote a poem that kind of reflects that same cattle drive area, maybe just a few years earlier than the setting for that song. The poem is April 1881.
They say it was a great life. They say they felt like kings. They say they were invincible and rode with stardust wings. They talk about the glory days before the barbed wire came. The trails they rode in youth were all a wild and woolly game. They gather now in San Antone where words and whiskey flow. And me, I have a memory too from 30 years ago. The meadowlarks were singing on a pretty April day. The air was fresh as cotton. The dawn was soft and gray. 3 other children sleeping when I found his scribbled words. He was gone for Ogallala with the wretched Texas herds. Just 10 days shy of birthday, he'd have turned 15 in May, and stories of the Chisholm Trail had stole his heart away. There was fortune in Nebraska underneath the northern sky, and I never even got the chance to kiss young Jim goodbye. His jacket needed mending, his boots not worth a song. There were biscuits in the pantry that he could have packed along. I might have sent a scrap of ribbon so he would not feel alone. I would have sewn $5 in his coat if I had known. He never liked the water. He knew he couldn't swim, but he would not shirk his duty, and the first to cross was Jim. The word came back from Wichita. I have the letter still. The trail boss wrote of courage, or you can call it what you will. That was back in '81, a time the cowboys praise. They chased the longhorns north again on trails of bygone days. And me, I long since moved back east. West Texas did me in. You talk of grit and fortitude, but words are mighty thin. I cuss the wind, lament the trail. I grieve the sacrifice. I'm just a cowboy's mother who paid too high a price.
Well, thank you so much for riding along, and I sure hope you can come back and do it again next week at the same time. And as always, thanks to the Spirit of the West official support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And you know, if you're looking for tractor parts, any make, any year, Mark's the guy that can help. And just see his page, bctractorparts.com. And the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine is out now. It's got my true story of Billy and the bull named Chester, along with a great picture of Chester. Get it at your favorite newsstand or subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. Be sure to check out the Facebook and podcast and YouTube versions of this program. Links to do that are on our website, hugh-mcclennan.com. And if you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that helps us a lot. Till next week, I'm Hugh McClennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.